Good day, everybody, and welcome to another episode of SIPA Paranormal Chronicles. My name's Lee, your resident host, and today I am over the moon to have talking to Caroline McKendrick-Gibson, who's a published writer, author, and paranormal investigator. Caroline, welcome.
Hi, Lee. Thank you very much for asking me on here today.
You are most welcome indeed. And I'd like to say, I love having different people to talk to about all different subjects. And I know that you've been published quite a few times, and I've been doing my homework and looking at some of the background. But what I'd like you to do first is just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into the paranormal and stuff like that, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, so I was brought up in Weymouth in Dorset in the UK and lived in this house that was a 4-floored Victorian place, 16 bedrooms. At the beginning when we moved in, it was extended by my parents. And when I was living in there, we used to have really weird things happen. So as a 10-year-old child, it really was confusing and I didn't know what was going on. So really that moment of having that paranormal activity at 10 is what sparked my interest into the paranormal. Now, I had a religious mother and went to a convent at the time. So you couldn't really go in and put this to your friends and your teachers at school. So I had to try and learn and find out more about the paranormal. So that's where my journey started. I've then gone on through self-learning. And also I now put all of my skills that I've learned through self-learning and my jobs that I've previously had. So I worked in the government sector. So I used to be a police officer, and obviously I've got investigative skills that I've learned through the job for the 10 and a half years that I was in. So I use the same principles of taking the evidence, getting the facts, researching, and then putting it together. And the unique selling point that we do within our team is that despite having all of the research and the evidence from other people, we then go on and investigate ourselves to see if we can get some collaboration between what it is that they've said and what it is that we found ourselves.
That's really cool. So one of my previous guests that's on the episodes that's been released was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP. Okay. And he's actually written 2 books about the paranormal in the police force. So did you actually experience any paranormal activity as a police officer?
I did, and I'm actually currently writing a book.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Exactly the same. So yeah, I'm concentrating. I've got about 30 stories from Somerset, Avon and Somerset police officers. I can't give you too much away or even a name of a title because I don't want someone else to crib it quick before it's been published, because as soon as the word is out there, it's obviously copyrighted. But yes, it will be out. Oddly, if you're a writer, you will know you don't just write one book at a time. So I've got 3 currently being written, one on Somerset ghosts, one on UK ghosts, and then the paranormal ghosts in the blue light kind of thing. So yeah, it should be out the end of the year, I should imagine.
Well, as long as your book on Ghosts of the UK covers Lincolnshire, from where I used to live, then I'll buy it. That's that has to be one of the agreements.
Well, the thing is, I'm quite happy to put something in for Lincoln if you want me to, but really the unique selling point for me is that it's stuff that's not always in the public domain. It's brand new and cases that I've had come into our team in Somerset, and then obviously we investigate, do all of the research and investigate, write it up. So generally the stuff that's going to be in the books is unknown. So if you know anything and you'd like me to include it, by all means, let's have a chat.
I'll definitely do some digging, because I think we've got some mutual friends. I know where both Katies live that neck of the woods. So
brilliant.
Katie, sure, yeah. So we'll talk about that later. Can you tell me how you first started to get into the writing aspect of it? What made you go from being a police officer into, I'm going to write about this kind of thing?
So, I mean, I did have quite a few incidents that while I was on the job, which just kind of fed more into my interest, to be honest with you, because you're working with level-headed people who are, as you would call it in a courtroom, you're an A1 evidence giver because of your ability to recount the truth and the facts that you see. So, having stood back after a couple of calls that we had that I couldn't explain, I left the job to go into equine physio. I was making far more money doing equine and human physio than I was in the job. So the call to go there was a lot better. But then I also started up my hobby, which was my own group. And we got called into a nightclub. And the nightclub was something that I attended regularly on night shift. So maybe 2 out of the 4 Fridays, Saturdays in the month, we would get a call out at about 2:45 in the morning, something like that, 2:30. And we would have to attend with the key holder. And it was always the movement sensors towards the back of the door that would go off. So, that really sparked my interest to get back into the paranormal world. But the writing, because obviously I was investigating quite a lot, and I joined ASSAP, which is the Association for Scientific Studies into Anomalous Phenomena. I joined as an executive director, and somebody messaged me and asked, would I like to go onto their podcast to be interviewed? And that was Spooky Isles. So David messaged and said, could you write me up to about 600, 800 words to go with your interview? Just a little bit about what we were talking about. And I said, yeah, no problem whatsoever. And I had so much feedback come back to say, oh my God, you've got a talent, you need to write. So David from Spooky Isles, my hubby, who was my then partner, and Corinne Besant, who is in one of the lead investigators, and she looks after the historic side for Jamaica Inn in Cornwall. The three of them all just said, you've obviously got a talent. Let's just see where you go. And I thought, imposter syndrome, can I do this? And I was cheeky. I went straight to Haunted Magazine, which is a worldwide publication, and said, what do you think of this? And they said, love it. Would you like to write for us? And I said, oh, okay. So with my first ever publication, I got front page, and I was just like, I know. So every copy that I've put in to be to publish, that's it. They're running with it. So I haven't had anything for the last couple of months because I've been incredibly busy with getting married and all of the after effects of that kind of thing. So that's how I got into writing, and I'm a little bit addicted to it. Still have imposter syndrome though. I still think, am I good enough?
Yeah, that kind of makes sense because I kind of did something similar. So I started off in the military, then went into the fire service, and then was a paramedic, all before moving to Canada. So I actually started writing stories about all the jobs that I went on, especially in the fire service and the power. And I'm always thinking to myself, like, is this good enough to actually have published? People go, oh yeah, you've got some great stories, but like you say, it's exactly imposter syndrome for me too. So I can completely understand where you're coming from. You mentioned Haunted Magazine, and I love that magazine. It's absolutely fabulous, and I've subscribed to it for the last few months. And this is where I'm getting a lot of my podcast guests from, because if I see an article that I love, it's got right, Caroline McKendrick-Gibson, right? How do I get in touch with her? And I'll do my research online to find out how to get in touch with these people, ask them onto the podcast, and then here we are.
Well, I'd like to say thank you so very much. I had a little bit of a stomach flip when you said, I read it, I like it, and then I invite them. And it's just like, I really do have a talent then. So I'm still, 2 years I've been writing for them and I still query. But I'm just beginning to think that, yes, I could be good enough. So, yeah.
Oh, look, let's put credit where credit's due. You are good enough. Let's just get that out there so that everybody knows. So, like, you wouldn't keep on doing it and they wouldn't keep inviting you if you weren't any good. So what you're doing is great and I love it. So keep up that. and we're going to talk about one of your particular articles in a few minutes. But what I'd like to talk about first is the Somerset Paranormal Investigators. Can you tell me how that group came about, and your role and some of the cool places you've investigated?
So my joining of a group to learn and to develop for investigating was a previous group before this. And I wasn't feeling totally aligned. I did learn a lot from them. They were a great group, but I didn't feel totally aligned. I think we were going in the wrong direction. So then I created Somerset Paranormal Investigators UK, but it was under a different name. It was called PERTIS back then, so Paranormal Investigators Research Team Yeovil and Somerset. So it's kind of developed as we, make it snappier and easier to remember.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how the group came about. We collaborate with other people. We go off and we do group shares for big places, and we split buildings into half for doing private hire for ourselves. We've gone through running events for members of the public, and from there we've kind of taken a step back a little bit from the public events, and we're just concentrating now on private cases. I think, like I keep using the word unique selling point when I was talking to you earlier, our unique selling point is that we go to places that are not currently on the map. So and it seems to be a lot of businesses as well. So at the moment, we've got a pub landlord who said, my staff are walking out. I'm going crazy. Can you come and help? So we've been investigating that probably for 6 months, because you don't just turn up on one occasion and everything's there, and you're going to get your answers. It slowly unfolds, and whatever's in the property, and that's assuming ghosts are real, because nothing in science has proved that they're real. Exactly. So, is it now that we've been there quite often and not, are we having more of itself showing itself to us? More of the staff are reporting more activity weekly. So yeah, this is what our team do. We take private cases that come in. Not just that, we have house private cases. We've even got a cracking case for a haunted camper van that's come in. So yeah, and we all used to be a little bit gung-ho, just wanting the oohs and the ahs way back in the day. And now it's more methodical, it's more clean investigating, and the team now are interested in the research side as well as just myself. So there are currently 8. I've got 2 trainees. Some people are coming out of their couple of years of training with us, and they're not going to go anywhere. They just enjoy what we do. So out of those 8 people, we really have quite a lot of professionals. There's another ex-police officer who's ex-CID, but I don't hold that against John at all. You have to have the banter, but obviously I was in the just the regular uniformed side. I did do undercover stuff, but CID, bless him. So that's fun. My now husband, we've obviously got married quite recently, Martin. He's a psychotherapist, so he studies the mind and deals with lots of trauma, anxiety, anything you can think of that you would go to therapy for. He deals with that kind of stuff. So, and it's interesting because in his study, he's learned about the brain and maybe how we would interpret information coming in. So he can explain a few things away, and also about how some hallucinations are caused using binaural beats in like a music form and things as well. So yeah, he's incredible to have on a team. We've got a district nurse, we've got a healthcare assistant, we have somebody with a business degree that works in public facing area, So we really do have a lot of information in their knowledge that's coming in. So yeah, I'm incredibly lucky with the team that we've got currently.
That's great. And it's weird how you kind of mention about doing the science and the research, because for SIPA, we actually look at things from a logical and rational viewpoint first. So you mentioned that your husband does what he does, and about hallucinations. but a lot of people don't know about, EMF can cause hallucinations, like black mold can, and stuff like that. So we look into that aspect of it first before we look into any kind of paranormal activity.
Yeah.
But we mentioned paranormal activity. The reason why you're actually here today, one of the articles that you put into the Haunted magazine is the 14 points of recognizing a poltergeist.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can now start on that and we can go through the 14 points, I think
Yeah,
it'd be
yeah.
really good for the listeners, because there's a big difference between normal intelligent haunting and a poltergeist, and between a poltergeist and a demon, etc., etc. So hopefully with these 14 points, the listeners will get a better idea of what a poltergeist activity can actually involve.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, what I have to make very clear, though, from the beginning is that even though I've listed 14 points within the magazine article, some of these overlap with other paranormal activity that you could have. Maybe residual haunting, you'd have a similar pattern of everything that would happen. So it would be what used to be called the stone tape theory. So something is set in history. And
Yeah,
if a man was a miner and he walked down a certain part of a tunnel every day to go to and from his job, he could be replaying that history. It said that he could be replaying that history. And that's what you would class as a residual energy. So now those energies are not ghosts, they're not spirits. It is laid down like a recording on a tape recorder. So once that's there, you can press rewind and play, rewind and play. It's not sentient, it doesn't understand, it's got no knowledge that it's there, it's just an energy placed in time. That's what is believed to be a residual haunting. Then you have the interactive spirits like your great Auntie Maud, who wants to come in and just to say, "Oh, hi, I'm here," and they try and get your attention and they do things. So this is where the difficulty is. How can we differentiate between what is great Aunt Maud, what is your residual laid down recording that's on replay and replay, and what is a poltergeist? So this is where taking information, getting that log of data is incredibly important. So without having the log of data so that we can look back and say, well, every Tuesday between 5 o'clock in the afternoon and 9 o'clock at night, we have lots of stuff happening. We need to have these data patterns to see what type of activity, when it's happening, is there anything that's aligning to it? Have the household had a massive blowout? So, when we go into a case that calls us in, is it more active on a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday? Which to me, as an investigator, would make me think, well, people are home more together as a family from Friday to Sunday. Are they not gelling well? Is there family interactions that's causing, a poltergeist type activity from having a clash, arguing more, increasing the energy that way? So this is what we need to look at. You can't just take these 14 signs and say, well, boom, I've ticked 6 of them, therefore it's 100% a poltergeist. Well, poltergeist activity is pretty rare, to be honest with you. So it's just understanding how to differentiate between what's your great Auntie Maud, your replaying tape, and what's possibly a poltergeist.
exactly. And I 100% agree with what you said, because reading your article and the fact that I've done some research on poltergeist with an online course, both of these subjects can absolutely blend together, and you can go through the checklist and go, well, a ghost does that, a ghost does that, a ghost does that. But you can also go, a demon does that, a demon does that, a demon does that. So, like you said, it's getting the evidence and
Mm.
putting it in logical format for you to definitively say,
So
yes, this is.
just before we move forward, to believe in demons, you've got to believe in God. So obviously I'm going to strike them out of my
Yep.
diary for today, let's just say. So I would never refer to anything as being demonic, because I'm a science-based girl and I need to have a science-based fact. And I don't necessarily per se believe, that there is a god or a demon. But let's just use the terminology. A demon is very, very different, vastly different from poltergeist. A demon is said to be something religious that was around when God created the earth, fell from heaven, out of grace, all that kind of stuff. And poltergeist is an energy form that has never been on the earth plane. So it's not a human that's passed, and it's not a ghost, and it's not a spirit. It's an energy form born from the person centered. So, say, for example, I have a poltergeist here. I don't know if I do. My house is haunted, but I don't know. We're still working on this one. We could say that, activity is increased when we argue. We don't argue very often, so it's not something that we would notice. But a poltergeist is from a person, and they call that the person-centered, that creates this energy. And that's very, very different from what's alleged to be a demon. So that's the difference that I just want to make before we move forward, that it comes from the person, and, there's not any rhyme or reason sometimes why this person-centered activity occurs.
No, and I 100% agree with what you say. Unfortunately, when you watch a lot of these TV shows, they use the D word far too often. And, if people actually looked into it, they would know that when the Catholic Church trains padres in exorcism, the first thing they do is teach them about mental health.
Yes.
So that kind of breaks that down, so we can put that to one side. But because we're talking about poltergeist, a lot of people do not know the difference.
No.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm getting you here today, so you can we can go through together, the checkbox, so to speak, of what is and what isn't.
See, the brain is this massive muscle that is so untapped. We're only using 20-25% of it knowingly, when you go and have scans. So what part of the brain is kicking into play to cause poltergeist activity from a center-born person creating that energy? We don't know. We don't understand it. So at the moment, everything that I'm telling you is theory-based.
Yeah, and it's like the we've mentioned earlier about electromagnetic fields. If you've got a faulty device that's pushing out high EMF, it can make you hallucinate.
Yes.
So, that is not paranormal activity. You've got something that's generally wrong in your property. So, the fact that we kind of have the proverbial checklist to go through, it's not even, it's not going to be 100% correct. It's going to be, these are the typical kind of activities, whereas a lot of people will just go, oh, I've got that, I must have a poltergeist, where it's not exactly that fact.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, EMF is responsible for quite a lot of stuff and for causing some lot of paranormal activity. If it's high enough, it has been known to leave burn marks on the skin. So this is why, we had a case in Dorset. So I'll just call it the Dorset case. And their EMF that it was kicking out at the bottom of the stairs was about 64 milligauss, which is quite high. And if you're constantly living in that, and in the kitchen, they must have had some kind of fault. It was a council-owned property, and we did get the council in to check the electrics when we were getting these high readings. And the council, being the council, did the normal, inspection test of the watts coming into the house, but they didn't check necessarily the connections in the house. So it was so bad in the end, the person moved out of the house. But that was causing a lot of burn marks when they were in a certain area of the house as well. So yes, it's really important that you get somebody who's scientifically based investigators with enough knowledge to be able to go through these scientific knowledge-based checks and make sure that your problems that you're having in the house have been discounted through the normal stuff like EMF. And as you mentioned, black mold, we've not dealt with black mold ourselves. So I cannot give you any information on that, unfortunately. But yes, once you've had the house checked, one of the first things that we do is look at the electric coming in. This house had 190, I forgot what it is coming in. Is it volts or watts coming in? And it was not enough, and the lights were flashing and it was blowing things in the house. So we got the board out, they put a meter in, left it there for a week, checked it and said, you're way under, we'll increase the amount of electric we've got coming into the house. And that resolved a lot of the lights flashing. Didn't stop the activity in the house though. So we then moved on to recording, logging, and seeing what information we've got for that. But yes, EMF's the first point that I would do. Obviously, you've brought up mental health. So we would be asking very delicately questions about mental health and medicines that people might be on. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and people don't kind of get that part of a paranormal investigator's job. They just think it's like a lot of the TV shows where you turn up at a house and you're seeing shadow figures, or you're seeing the proverbial white sheet with the holes in. Yeah, but it's not that at all. The objective of a paranormal investigator is to help that individual. So if it turns out to be a rodent problem or an EMF problem or a black mold problem, that's something that can be rectified.
Yes.
And then at the end of the day, you've still helped the client.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand. They just think that you walk into a haunted house looking for ghosts and getting voices and that kind of thing, and that's it at the end of the day. But that couldn't be further from the truth.
This is the thing that members of the public don't understand. When you're looking for somebody who is a suitable person to come and investigate your house, I mean, if you're living out there in Canada and you'd like us to visit, if you want to trump up 2 airplane tickets to come out, Martin and I would be very happy to come and help you at any time. But please, if you're looking for somebody to investigate your house, do your checks, do your due diligence, have a look at them online, see what kind of content that they're providing on their social media. Are you having the woos and the lights that's flashing and the attention? Listen, I've just got this orb. And no, orbs are not dead people. Orbs are dust and moisture. But that's another story. So we'll leave that for another day. Really be careful who you're inviting into your own home. You wouldn't invite an unsolicited seller of double glazing into your own home without doing checks on them. So just make sure when you're inviting people in, for your own safety, see who you've got coming in, because I feel responsible to the people who call us in our team to ensure that they understand fully that we're not there to be like a certain Mr. Bagans on TV and, go down the route of demons. We are science-based, and it's more like social worker that you're going in and reassuring them that everything is okay, it's going to be okay, nobody's being seriously injured by any paranormal activity, nothing lasting, no one's died, no children have ever been noted in history of being injured, so this is our job, to make them feel comfortable and reassured.
Exactly. And I even made a comment on a post that I saw this morning on Facebook where someone was saying, oh, I've been scratched multiple times, it must be a negative entity. So I kind of did my diplomatic thing and put, okay, it's not always negative. If you are being like manhandled by a spirit, at the end of the day, if that spirit is reliving its life and you're in its way on a corridor, it could be just trying to move you out of the way. Or if it has tried to communicate with you and you've ignored its voices because you can't hear them, the next logical choice of actions is to try to reach out to you. So it may not be the fact that they're trying to hurt you. It might just be that they're trying to get your attention. So just because you've got a scratch, it doesn't mean that it's a malevolent spirit that's trying to hurt you.
Exactly. I mean, I've been doing this within a group for, I would say, 12 and a half years. I've only ever had one physical scratch.
Yeah.
Was it that? Was it caused by, as I've mentioned, high EMF? Who knows? It was quite a unpleasant feeling to the room that we were in, and a lot of people were feeling odd. And yeah, so that's one time that I've been scratched. But I believe that if there are such things as ghosts in life, you are in death as you are in life. So if you're a bit angry, you're going to be a bit angry.
Yeah, and like I say, it, it sounds like you and I are on the same wavelength with regard to how we do our investigations. You have to do things logically, and you have to rule out. I've got noises in the attic. Okay, do you have a rodent problem? Well, I don't know. I've not looked. Yeah, and it's that kind of thing that you have to do it first. It's all good and well watching these TV shows like I said earlier, where you walk through the door and things are happening straight away, but that is not always the case. So yeah, I did learn on one of my online courses that a lot of the times the agent involved in a paranormal occurrence can be an adolescent teenager because of the problems that they've been going through in their life, problems at home, problems at school, etc. Can you kind of elaborate on if you've kind of looked into, done the research on that to prove that as a fact?
Yes, so academia has looked into this, whether or not it's more prevalent poltergeist activity in adolescents. And the answer that's come back through academial trials is that it doesn't seem to be favoured for adolescents or teenagers. It does seem to have an impact of hormonal effects. And I'm not just talking about a lady at certain times of the month. If you have an imbalance of pituitary glands or chemicals within your brain, then obviously that's going to be causing some type of hormonal imbalance so that your body is not in sync. So, yeah, that could possibly be reason why upset and argument seems to be more prevalent in poltergeist type activities and unsettled environment.
That's it. And a good point to continue with that kind of train of thought. Before we came online, we were both talking about an individual that lives in Seattle whose husband and wife living in a house, and the amount of paranormal activity that he encountered. They don't have any children. The relationship seemed to be going fine at that particular time. Okay, yeah, it broke up afterwards, but before that. So for it to be centered on adolescent children kind of take out the equation. Would you
Mm-hmm.
kind of agree with that?
Yeah, like I say, academical investigations into that and studies has not proved that adolescence has prevalence to why this would happen. No, it doesn't come out higher. It's probably, I would say, almost an even split between male and female, almost.
Right. Yeah, because I know, especially in the UK, and we've got the example in Seattle that I've just mentioned. There's a couple of really high profile cases in the UK that say this is definitely a poltergeist. But even when you look at some of the still photographs from a complete layperson not knowing anything, you would say that these photographs are staged because of the positioning of the individual, what's going on in the background. It doesn't look as realistic as what they say it is. But obviously, we weren't there, so we don't know that. But just
No,
by looking at still photographs, that doesn't give you a true and an accurate report of that
no.
particular incident.
But see, nowadays we're moving into AI. Even having video footage is not going to be something that is going to prove that it was poltergeist. Our team very, very rarely put anything out there that we capture because it's exhausting trying to explain to people that we're science based. We're honest. Two of us are ex coppers, so we don't stage anything because there really wouldn't be any point. But in all of the cases that we've dealt with and high end cases, of high-end reports of activity, every single one has some element of faking and hoaxing. So I have done a talk for ASSAP. It's in Bath University that I gave this talk about hoaxing and within the paranormal, misinterpretation of information, why they think that it's poltergeist or why they think it's a haunting, and the different reasons why you would be given false information. So if you wanted to have a follow-up, go and have a listen to that talk as well. But I think in high-end cases where they're telling you we've got X, we've got Y, we've got Z, they feel that they have to constantly keep giving you stuff. And if you have a lull in paranormal activity, I've got to fill that gap. I've got to do something. Or is it an element of control? Is it some kind of coercive control within the family? Is it some kind of intimidation of another family member to keep them there in the house? So this is the type of thing that we look at. But yes, there's always an element of faking and hoaxing. So some of the pictures could be hoaxed. Some could be very real, but it's very difficult. I wasn't thinking clearly when I had what I consider to be contagion paranormal poltergeist activity here in the house. I was so blown away, so absolutely terrified by what happened in our own house that I just took a still photograph. I didn't video and walk it through and say, well, that's where this thing started before it reported. And that's where it, I took 2 stills and people could just go, well, you staged it. And it's just like, I haven't made it public, but, I think people who have genuine paranormal activity will be the quiet ones that don't put it out there.
Yeah, and I agree. And I was talking to a complete random fact, a Bigfoot investigator a few weeks ago, and I asked him if he would publicise the fact that he'd had genuine contact, and he actually said no, because he would not want to jeopardise that species if he did find it. And it's the same kind of concept. Yeah, unfortunately, like you said, you mentioned AI, and we've got these phone apps nowadays that can speak to your mother. You've got stick figures and stuff like that. If you're going to use those, you've got to be really, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, conscious of the fact that this is AI at the end of the day. If you've got a bank of words, who's saying that app's not listening to what you're saying and just producing the bank of words? So I tell people that if you are using any kind of app that's got voice activity, if you ask a question, if you say, what day is it, and they come out with Monday, that's a relevant answer to your question. If you come out with what day is it and they say Somerset, it's not a relevant answer, so you can kind of completely debunk that. And I think that's kind of the best way to go forward. You've got to be logical about it. We've already mentioned about orbs, and people will argue the fact that orbs are spirits, orbs, until the end of the days. But
I'm not saying that orbs can't be a spirit manifestation. I'm not saying that, because my mind is pretty open. I'm a skeptical believer. That's how I would class myself.
Yeah.
We can take 99.9% of orbs and completely give them a rational explanation and dismiss them. And it's very easy how we can do that with, especially with single lens reflexes in cameras. You get light anomalies and camera anomalies. We've got a photographer in our group, a professional photographer, and we look at a lot of AI generated and camera caught things. So we do dismiss stuff, but you can get that 0.1% that you look at it and you say, do you know what? That's just not the right shape for dust or an insect. And you slow it down, you put it through, very, very slow frame by frame. And then when you're listening to it, you then get a noise that comes through on a frequency that isn't necessarily a frequency of the human voice or human sound. And you think, well, okay, I can't explain this one, so I'm now going to put it in that box that's called unexplained. and we will leave it there in the unexplained box as just something that, we cannot debunk.
Yeah,
So
and
I have
sorry.
seen an orb that I class to be not dust and not moisture and not an insect.
Yeah, and we do exactly the same if we pick up EVPs. I've got a friend who's got a great audio background, and if I pick up an EVP, I will send it to him, and he will do the complete waveform, and he'll check it, and he'll go, "Yeah, that's your voice, that's the EVP," and they're completely different.
Yeah.
And again, we don't say, "Oh, that's a check for the haunted box." We just put it on the same pile as you do, so that pile's getting bigger of unexplained, that we cannot put a rational explanation to it.
You see, if you take the word paranormal, para means outside of, and obviously normal means normal. So paranormal is just a word and a box that we have lumped everything into that we can't explain away.
Yeah.
Now, as we progress with science and we progress with knowledge and understanding of the human mind and other things that can have an influence on us, less things will be in that paranormal box and more things will be debunked. So we are slowly moving towards finding more, and but there is a huge amount that we don't know. So
Oh,
we have to
100%.
stay and remain in that box.
Exactly. Well, we are coming close towards the end of our conversation, but I would love to know a little bit more about what's happening in your house.
So I've lived here for, I think, 8.5 years now, and we've had activity from the minute I came in. My late husband passed away 10.5 years ago and never came to this house at all. But back in the other house, my smoke alarms used to go off at like 3 a.m, 3:45, 4, something like that. And they would ring 3 times and then stop. And it would always be birthdays or anniversaries or special occasions. I thought once we'd moved here, or I'd moved here, I wouldn't have that anymore. But that was one of the first paranormal experience I had when this place was being ripped to bits and I was having a full renovation. There was no electric in most of the house, and I had battery operated smoke alarms. So I was talking to a close friend of the family who's like a daughter and saying about, well, the smoke alarms won't go off here because there's no electric. And at that moment, the smoke alarm went off for 3 rings on the battery operated one. And I just thought, do ghosts have free will? Can they move? Is he here? Is he visiting here? So it was almost right towards the beginning that things started happening. But I've now got 8.5 years worth of logged stuff. And I call it stuff because it's in that box of the unexplained. And it started on, and it's really weird, so weird that it goes in like cycles, it recycles itself of what it does. So I was having a dog barking and a man coughing to start with. And I thought, oh, this is weird, a dog barking. And I've got a dog, but my dog was asleep on the floor by my feet. And as we've progressed through time, it's got weirder. I think I had a little bit of, crikey, I've said the word a minute ago. When you pick up a poltergeist attachment from somewhere else and it can come back with you, I had dealt with a high-end case that I was working with, a field investigating with another team for the SPR, and it was up in Essex area. And I don't know if we got a bit of contagion or if somebody is the person-centered agent here in our property. But when I was writing this article for the Poltergeist, I'm reading out bits to my partner at the time, my husband, saying, what do you think? Does that sound okay? Because in my head, it sounds a bit weird. And, the more I was reading it, the more weird things were happening in the house. And literally after I'd sent this off to my agent, my editor, I woke up the next morning. Martin's watch went off at 5 o'clock because he was going out and doing a marathon run. And it went off at 4:45 in the morning. 5 minutes past 4:45, we heard a little girl on the hallway upstairs going, la, la, la. And I'm like this. and he's up on his elbow looking out, and he went, "Oh my God, did you just hear something?" I said, "Yeah, and we're now going to have to go, what did you hear?" to see if we're not priming each other. And he said, "I don't know what the hell that was, but it sounded like a girl, a lady singing." And I went, "That's exactly what I heard." But if you go through my list of items on the article, one of the things that I was saying is that poltergeist activity can take on the form of mimicking voices and mimicking. And I was particularly picking on this point to my husband the day before. So,
That's weird.
oh my God. And of course, I was talking to Andy Saw, and he says, "Oh my God, if you've got contagion, what happens if we put this into print and we send it to thousands of people all over the globe? Are they all going to have your paranormal contagion of a poltergeist?" I said, "Oh, it doesn't work like that." Like I know the rules completely. But for contagion, I am 99.9% confident that you have to have had a personal connection with that house that's got that activity. And
Right.
Martin and I had been there, and literally within 48 hours, we had all hell on earth kicking off here in this house when I put that article in. And, you know, I've had objects apporting, so they go missing. Martin's running watch went missing, and it went missing for 6 months. And he went out and just went, "Oh, do you know what? Blow this. I am going to go and buy another one. I've got big runs coming up and I need my watch." So he went and bought one. And literally the day after he bought it, his other watch turned up where we had pulled apart the seat that he sits in the front room, and he plugs it puts it on his little cabinet next to the chair in the front room. We pulled everything apart. He did, I did. We have a lady come in to help deep clean every now and again. She pulled the whole thing apart, nothing. And then the day afterwards, this turned up. And then the next week, the other one went missing. And it turned up somewhere really weird that he would never go, and just stumbled upon it by chance. Like, "What the hell's your watch doing here?" And stuff like this. But the smell, we just gone out to go to a wedding fair and came in the house. And I said, "Right, when we go in the house now, because of all this happening, because of this magazine article, we won't talk about poltergeist activity. We won't discuss it. We won't try and entice it to feed off our emotions and feed it." But as soon as we walked into a smell of rancid sweat. I've never experienced anything like that. And the smell was so pungent. It was like a workman had been on a building yard for a week, had gone home every day, not washed, and put the same clothes back on, sweaty smell.
Like, how can you explain that? You can't, can you?
We both smelt it. It dissipated within 3 seconds of smelling it. It's like, that's vile, and then it went. And then you walked into the kitchen and the smell was in front of you like it had walked before you. I've only ever had that again about a month ago. And that's the 2 occasions in the whole time I've lived here. We get cigarette smoke that you can smell. But the clock, we've got a grandfather clock, the winder gets thrown regularly. And the more activity that we have in the house seems to be when we wind the clock up. And I don't just mean wind it up by going, "Oh, you're a clock." We physically wind this grandfather clock up, and it seems to be increases the activity. So one of the theories is that some of the activity could be linked to this object that was brought in when Martin moved into the house, because I bought this house 2 years prior to meeting him. So is some of it caused by this really old antique?
Maybe you can write a book on just the house.
Oh, I have 8.5 years of logged information. It's keeping people occupied because we've put the team to work that once a month we investigate. And if you know John Fraser from the
No, not
SPR,
for. Okay.
he's written poltergeist books and things as well. If you haven't bought his book, you might be interested in reading some of the things that he's done himself with his own investigation for the SPR. He I send him regularly, a couple of times a year, the updates, and he's baffled to the stuff that I've written. And, we've got scientific equipment that's put all over the room, all over the lower part of the house, that measures atmospheric pressure, temperature, humidity. So we're looking at all the science based, and we are finding that we get atmospheric pressure differentiates really massive peaks or massive drops in change with the pressure when we get activity. So yeah, we are studying things a lot. The knocking and the banging that's been going on in this place over the last 2 weeks is crazy. And the newest activity to start is that a spoon in the coffee making area in the kitchen gets regularly dropped into a bowl. It's like a ceramic bowl. And I showed you that before we started this. Is it loud enough that you heard that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And it's like your husband was across the kitchen.
Yeah. So the only thing that is, out of sight of the camera is the kettle right underneath it. I mean, it's a flat wall, it's an external wall, and there's no way that anybody will be able to stand there. But I am thinking about getting other cameras so that people can't say that we've faked stuff. There's no need for us to fake it. There's so much stuff that happens here. But everything that's on my 14 list, basically, we've had, except for I don't think we've had stacking of objects. We've had objects being thrown, moving, apportations. We haven't had any water appearances and no spontaneous fires. That's the 3 things on my list that we haven't had.
Wow. That's unbelievable. And what a way to finish an interview, to have some personal experiences.
Yeah.
So, Caroline, thank you very much. It's been a most enjoyable and informative interview episode, whichever you want to call it. And I hope we can do this again. You're getting the official invite now to come back for one of your many other topics that we can talk about.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Love to.
Okay, thank you for your time, and we'll definitely speak again. Thanks very much. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.